you know, margin of error being everything equal here, it probably doesn't fall up in here and end up being that big. So again, you know, this is like, you got to read the drawing a little bit and get what you can out of it. That's really one of the most important skills of this particular drawing. So this guy is also, if you remember, I'm going to put this guy on my center for now. And this has allowed me to kind of move to the next step. It's telling me that there are two of these guys. So two of these smaller 1.25 circles. And they are the intersection, if you see, they're the intersection of that center line and that center circle in both instances. So from here, I'm going to get a radius circle, and I'm going to put right at the intersect snap there, I'm going to put in a 0.125 space bar, click my center, and I can hit enter again because it was the default. And so now I have my two inside circles. And they also tell you right up here that this is, the bigger one is going to be an instance of 0.5, again, that same intersection. So I'm going to go 0.5. So I should have a small circle down here and two circles at the top. Get the center snap up.
Yeah, no, yeah, I have to zoom out a little bit. There's the stupid line.
All right, so from here, there's some more information that I have to dissect out of this thing. You're gonna notice that these curves are laid in, but they don't give you any radius of them. But you do notice that they intersect. Remember, this was a circle here. It's kind of hard to draw with this. But you can see that this was a circle, right? And I've reproduced that circle here. And that circle has an intersection right there of this curved line, which we don't know the radius of. It touches both the center line and the circle 0.5 that I drew. Okay, so again, I'm going to try and reproduce that, and it's a little bit of trial and error. I'm going to try it like this, and I think that you're going to find that it works out pretty well. So I'm going to go, look, I know the information is that there's a circle that intersects that center line and intersects this 0.5 circle, right? Would you agree with that? So I'm going to get a circle, and I'm going to try it here, and I'm going to try that intersection snap at the center line and the circle I inserted.
So
And it's
did
pretty
you
close.
use diameter or
Radius. It wouldn't really matter because
Okay.
I don't think it would really matter, but I did radius. So I'm just going to do the inside and outside of these guys. So it kind of looks like, as Ben would like to say, a hot mess. Right? So I have a bunch of circles there, but I'm going to trim a bunch of these. Okay? So what I've done, if you missed any of that, let me just back up real quick. So I did a radius circle from that same center point at the inner and outer intersection of these two circles I laid in. So it should kind of look like that. So you have your inner edge and your outer edge, and your inner edge and your outer edge both big and small circle.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Didn't you do an exercise where when you make one circle, you sort of like kind of do and kind of made it different dimensions earlier when you started off? Like it just, you know, it was like a drop down or whatever. Like you were doing, it was the same
I think-
time you did the mirror.
I talked about this guy, that there was the diameter in the center.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? They're
So-
under that split circle line.
Okay.
Alright, so, hopefully you have that, like I said, they're just inner and outer of where that center line intersects with the circles we put in. And that, I'm gonna trim these, and you're gonna probably be like, oh, that looks great. 'Cause it does. But, I'm gonna do trim enter, and then I'm just gonna start at the, I know I don't need any of this out here, right? So any of this stuff that's out in this edge, I don't need that. So I'm gonna get rid of that one. I'm gonna get rid of that one. I'm gonna get rid of that one, and I'm gonna get rid of that one. And that really kind of frees up a whole lot. Okay? And for this part, I'm gonna click that center off too, just because it's easier to see. So how do I know what to get rid of? Well, I know that my boundary was this 0.5 radius circle, right? So anything that protruded past this circle, I knew I can get rid of because I don't need it for the object lines. And the same instance occurs down here, like all of this mess in this area of the center. Again, this part right here, this horizontal line, is the boundary line of anything I need to keep. So I can get rid of all of this too. I'm just gonna go through and delete all of those. And that's gonna get rid of all of the stuff that's in the middle, but also allows me to kind of zoom in a little bit here. And you can see, again, if I'm using that inner circle, that 0.125 circle as a boundary, then I know that these tails also need to go. Okay, so I'm just clicking, I'm gonna get rid of those guys. Same thing at the top. Anything that went past the little circle, I don't need. So I'm gonna use that as a boundary and trim those guys out. And from here, I'm gonna trim the rest of this. So I don't really need any of these pieces. And you should kind of start to see this come together. So it starts to kind of look like something, right? Hopefully something good. So there's a bunch of trimming there for sure.
Can't you cut your center lines back at this point too?
Sure good.
Yeah, question. Below the circles, the two circles, how do you start that? Is that tangent again?
Say what I'm close.
No, yeah, those lines and then the
Quadrant.
bottom lines, yeah.
Quadrant.
Quadrant.
Yeah.
You did that from the command line?
No, I went object snaps.
Okay.
See this guy with the little green corner?
Uh-huh.
Leave an arrow next to it.
Okay.
I went turn quadrant on about half of that. You guys okay with me? Alright, so at this point, you know, there's a lot of trimming, but it isn't horrible to get this far if you kind of know the trick of the curves. The part that is, I guess, more difficult to see is now we're going to use that tangent radius again. And I know that because it gives me a labeled radius and a point in space. I don't know what that point in space is, and I certainly don't want to try and guesstimate from this curve at which point of the curve, and I gotta measure up and find that. It also gives me this one as a point in space, right? So again, you know, I don't wanna be fumbling through just kinda guessing where those are. So anytime you see this point in space that has a defined radius like this, and I don't know that this is like super common, but it does come up. Anytime you see that point in space that you don't know exactly where it is in space, but you know it's coming from part of the object that you're creating, that's gonna be a time to use that tangent radius circle. Okay? So anytime you see this kind of like just point way out here and they're like, yeah, that's kind of just drifting, then you know that automatically is an indicator that you probably are gonna use tangent radius. So tangent radius here is gonna be this circle. If I drop the bottom, you remember tangent radius is the second to last one. And I'm gonna go tangent to this, right, somewhere on here, doesn't exactly matter where, because that curved surface is gonna act as a self-defining area, which is kind of cool. And then somewhere on this circle, I'm gonna find that too. You can run into trouble if you use the first part of the line, so I would discourage you from using that. You wanna be on the circle. And my radius for this one, if you saw, is 1.483. So it should look kinda like that. Okay. Just gonna run that back really quick. So I'm gonna go tangent radius, I'm gonna click on the curve, and I'm gonna click on the circle, and then I'm gonna enter in that 1.483, and that should give me something that I can then trim. So trim, enter, and I wanna get rid of these lines too. So if you're gonna trim this curve, this one's gonna go pretty well for you. Okay, I'm gonna click those two chunks. Here's where you're gonna run into trouble. And Marion, you asked about this earlier. If I go to trim this, right? So I'm in trim, I just got rid of those pieces, and I hover over this guy, it does not give me the red X. Right? This is a line fragment at this point. So the line fragment, if you click on it, you're gonna notice, see it has a defined beginning and end, right? Versus if I have this guy, when I trim this, right, this portion is going back to a cross line. So right here, it's using the center line as what they call a trim boundary. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna trim this back to that trim boundary. Then I can trim this one back, and again, it has a trim boundary because it's where this was a tangent to. So it's gonna use that as a reference again. So I'm gonna get rid of that. But here, you can see that it does not have a boundary. That nothing intersects this line as such. So I can't trim it because it has nothing to go back to as reference. So that's just a fragment. So that's why that happens. So this one though, you can kind of see that's a fun one. That one a lot of people kind of miss. But I want to trim this back. See that? If I zoom in on that enough, these kind of overlapped. And the bottom one, I can trim back. How do you know which one it is? Well, the other one's not going to let you. That one's a fragment. But the bottom one will. That's where that line intersected and crossed over. So that's a quick way to get that guy. You have to zoom in on it a little bit.
Mine doesn't actually reflect.
As you click on the circle.
Try to change the radius, it wouldn't let me do it unless I was, I just,
Try and type regen, R-E-G-E-N. I'm going to zoom in.
well, I just
So,
increase my circle a little bit. And then what I'll do is
so
I'll
the
change.
regenerate, a lot of times if you zoom in on something, it distorts it. I think we talked about this
Yeah.
before, right? And if you regenerate the model, you'll actually see that they do touch. It's just the zoom distortion.
I still might give you a trim option for it.
Yeah, mine's not letting me trim it.
Well, way to screw up.
Regen?
Which is, yeah,
I gotta see now for the day.
Yeah, see for the day.
you know what, when I blow it up, I see my little circle.
I get a B, the
Don't
small one
run
worked
up.
just fine, it's the big one giving me trouble.
Alright. Well, you guys can fiddle with that. I just want to show you this last one and then give you some
He's like,
time.
I'm done, guys, you can figure it out.
So let me do this one. You guys can come back and work on that, but I don't want you to miss this part. So this other one I'm going to do too. This one is also a tangent radio.